And good morning, happy Monday. Welcome to week 8 of our course. So we're going to take a look at what you've got to do for this week, including the navigating the databases assignment, because just as a friendly reminder, you need to use at least one outside source for this SA2 assignment, and it needs to come from the library databases. That goes for any additional sources you choose to bring into the paper as well. You cannot get sources through Google for this paper. Let me be very clear about that. Okay, so just so there's no confusion, databases only, because yes, that's how we're doing it. So, and I'm going to show you guys some good places to find what you need in databases today. So if you are unfamiliar with using them, please watch the other video that I posted. I've linked to it again in this week's announcement about how to use the databases. That'll get you in, show you how to, work around inside of the databases. I'm going to assume you've watched it. So, if you need to pause here, go watch that video, and then we're going to just start right at the, right inside at the places I want to show you. Okay. And if you need help getting access, just let me know. Remember, you do need a student ID number to get in. So if you don't know what yours is, email me and I can look it up pretty easily for you. Okay, so you've done some brainstorming for SA2. I will be looking at that over the next couple of days and getting back to you on it. Just like with the other essay, you are going to turn in an outline for feedback. So it gives you a pretty clear template here. I mean, it's pretty general, but this is what you need to follow. You don't need to have your entire conclusion paragraph figured out yet. Just some general thoughts is fine at this point. But for the introduction, it tells you exactly what you need to put in there, starting with a summary of the poem. So for that, I mean, summaries are pretty brief, they're pretty general. Just if you think about it as if you had to explain to somebody who'd never read the poem before what the poem is about in 2, 3, 4 sentences, what would you say? And then your thesis statement. Remember, your thesis should serve as a mini outline for the paper. So if you want to go ahead and name the specific poetic devices, or you should definitely, if you're only looking at one, definitely name what that one is. So in this example, it's metaphor. If you're talking about 3 different ones, then you would name those 3 different ones. So very similar to the format of the last paper. But remember, your thesis needs to be argumentative. It needs to take a position on the poem and how the poem uses that device or devices to create a certain effect for the audience of the poem. So what are they trying to accomplish and how are they using those poetic devices to do it? Okay, so you've got examples here to help you. And then you're just going to follow that same format as last time. So whatever your points were in your thesis, if you had the 3 different devices, that's where you're going to talk about each one at a time. And then where it says evidence and discussion, this is where you're going to go ahead and bring in examples from the poem in the form of direct quotes. You don't need to cite them yet. We can hold off on that. I mean, if you want to go ahead and do it, and I can let you know if you're doing it correctly, that's fine. Make sure you spend time talking about those examples too a little bit, because if you just bring in the quotes, I don't necessarily know what you plan to do with them, so I can't really give you a whole lot of feedback. Okay. So a couple of examples for each point that you're making. So let's say you're talking about personification in the first point. Then you'd bring in a couple of examples from the poem of personification, talk about those. For number 2, let's say you're talking about understatement, do the same thing. For number 3, whatever your third device is. Again, if you're just doing one for the whole thing, you're going to need to figure out how to look at that one device from different angles and bring in examples of that for each one. Okay. So this should set you up pretty nicely for both writing the paper, but also doing your research, because much like shopping, grocery shopping, if you've ever done that or had to do that, it helps to have a list, right? So you're not stuck with this. It's an outline. You'll get feedback on it. You might need to make changes. It might be perfect. Who knows? We'll find out. But knowing what you want when you go in and start looking around for information is tremendously helpful, much like grocery shopping with lists. So you don't leave with stuff that you don't need. It takes a lot less time. So with that, let's look at the navigating the databases assignment. And you got a quiz on shifts. Also do Sunday. Okay. So what are we doing? All right, you are being asked to first navigate through the Greenville Tech databases to find an article through the databases, select an article that could be used for your upcoming essay. You can change your mind later. And then I'm going to put the instructions here for the essay again. And then you're going to read your chosen article, discuss it in the assignment. So you only get full credit if you use the databases for this. And I'll be able to tell based on the bibliographic information you provide about the source. So no Google, okay? Oh, you're going to give a works cited entry. I'll show you where to find that. And you're going to write a paragraph about the source. So it recommends Literature Resource Center, and I am going to show you that, but there's some other places too that can be helpful. There are some poems on the list that it may be a little bit more difficult to find information, but I will show you some workarounds for that, okay? If you email me and say there's nothing in there, I will say, hold my jewelry, and I will go in and we'll find something. It may take a little bit more creativity. Don't just give up and hit the eject button if you don't find what you want immediately. The databases just don't work that way. They're great, they just don't work the same way that Google does. So yeah, like it says, be creative in how you search for an article, but I'm here to help you with that. It gives you some instructions on how to get there, but I'll show you in just a minute. And then don't just pick the first one, pick one that actually looks helpful and good. And you're going to format this document the same way you would an essay. So have the left-hand corner information, indent your paragraph, all that. Underneath that, you're going to have your works cited entry. And I'll show you that in a minute. Hanging in it for the citation, all the same stuff. Oh, no, wait, sorry, I want you to do it backwards. So put like you would an annotated bibliography. My apologies. So the entry goes at the top and the paragraph goes underneath. I'll post an example here in the assignment so you can look at it. Academic tone, proper grammar mechanics, all that stuff. And there is a model here. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, yeah, that's pretty straightforward. It should actually enable editing. Take the hanging indent off. I'm going to fix this. I don't know why it looks like this. I didn't put it in there. They give me the course. I'm going to fix this and I'm going to put up a correct version because there's stuff that needs to be taken out of the entry too. We don't need the editor. We don't need the access date. The thing about the database is they give you the works cited entry, but they often include things that don't need to be in there according to the handbook standards that we follow. I will fix all this. I will put it up in there for you as a correct document. Let's talk about the databases. Okay, so I'll fix that. Pinky swear. People still do that? Pinky swear? Assuming you know how to get to the databases because you've watched that other video, I would recommend using this subject guide here and just going right down to where it says literature. So we've got a bunch of different literature databases. Some will be helpful for this assignment, some less so. The one that the assignment itself was talking about was Literature Resource Center, which we'll look at in a minute, but we've got other ones too. Poetry for Students can be helpful for something like this because we're writing about poetry. These other ones, not so much. Gale Literature Criticism has poetry criticism. Criticism doesn't mean it's saying negative things about the poem. It just means it's analyzing the poem, talking about the poem, much like you are in your paper. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. Bloom's Literary Reference can be really good too. You won't be able to find every poem on the list in here, but let's say you pick My Papa's Waltz. Remember, any poem from the reading list is fine. That was on the reading list. So as you can see, there are a bunch of articles about that poem. There's an article about the poet Theodore Roethke. That's a totally different poem altogether, but yeah, it's not all going to be great, but this one's probably pretty on point. So talks about the poem, and then let's see if we can find the citation. So for this database, they don't put it at the bottom, they put it at the top, but you click on the button and then boom, there it is. Again, there's some extra jazz in there that needs to be taken out. So just go with your handbook. I believe it's page 356. Take out anything that doesn't need to be there. Okay. So Bloom's can be good. Again, not every poem's going to be represented in here, but some of the more discussed poems will be here, like Emily Dickinson definitely will be. This one's in there. Some of the poems on our list are like pretty old and have been around for a long time and have been discussed for a long time. Some of them less so, but that doesn't mean you should, again, just bail if you're not finding an entire article about the poem. Like that's not necessarily what you need. You may need to find information about the poet instead. So for instance, let's say you want to talk about the poem Commitments by Essex Hemphill. We can look and see if there's anything about that poem. We're back in Gale Literature Resource Center. And for something like that, I would do, oh, there's his name. I would do a combined search, poet's name, and the title of the poem. Let's see what comes up. Okay, so this, let me get rid of myself here in the way. Get out of the way, Liz. So this is not specifically about the poem, but it does touch on subjects that are potentially relevant. What else? So the only thing I can say for sure about these is talking about Langston Hughes a lot, but that's also because he was a poet who was gay and black, like Essex Hemphill. So that means that though that Essex Hemphill is mentioned somewhere in these articles, so they could be helpful, but it may be better to do what's called a person search and just look up poet and find an article that is generally, so there are 5 articles that discuss Essex Hemphill. So again, these are not about, they're 2 biographies, a couple of reviews. Probably the biographies are going to be more helpful. These are not about the poem, but they are about the poet. And so if, let's say you want to focus on the theme of Commitments being about the kind of isolation and loneliness that comes even with your own family members from being a member of the LGBT community, especially if your family's not supportive of that, I mean, to hide that aspect of your life. Well, I think you could probably find a lot of very supportive stuff in this article about Essex Hemphill and his work within the LGBT community and his life growing up. So this looks like there's some actual, yeah, there's a quote from him about growing up, all that. So again, MLA citation down here. I can eyeball it and tell you there are things that are incorrect about it, but use your handbook 356. So like you need to take that out. You need to take the access date out. But everything else looks good. Easy, easy. All right, so Literature Resource Center is great. Bloom's can be great, depending on the poem. What else? We'll try Gale Literature Criticism. This is very similar to Literature Resource Center, but let's say we put in Emily Dickinson and because I could not stop for death. Well, that, let's try that again. In the poem. It's pretty famous. Huh. Yeah, maybe not as good. I would use Literature Resource Center, maybe. There's biographies about her, though. Are there? Well, that didn't go as well as I would hope. But Literature Resource Center is great for all kinds of things, biographical stuff about the poet, literary criticism. Again, don't panic if you can't find an article specifically about your poem. I know I'm going to get at least 3 emails from people saying, is it okay that I can't find an article about the poem? Yes. Yes, it is. It's totally okay. You're just going to have to, again, get creative. And let's try Theodore Roethke again. That shows up. We're in the Poetry for Students. Yeah, Poetry for Students. Yeah, here it is, another one. Yeah, you're just gonna have to be a little bit more creative and find stuff about the poet and figure out how to apply that to what you're saying, which I'm confident you can. But if you find an article about the poem, great. If you don't, that's okay. All right, those are the ones I would recommend out of this list here, and now you know where to find them. But if you're struggling with finding a source and you need my help, just reach out. I like a challenge when it comes to looking for research material. So the one thing I won't accept is there's nothing. There is stuff. I know for a fact there is because we've been doing this for a while, and y'all aren't the first. So if other students can do it, so can you, and I am happy to help. So don't be a stranger. Let me know. Don't wait till Sunday though, because I probably won't get back to you in time. Okay, y'all have a great week and keep up the great work. Adios.